welcome to After Hours Authors. My name is Jess, and like you, I love writing fiction after hours. And today's episode is very special. I have a special guest with me, Liam Selby, and he is a writer and editor, and we're going to talk about all things editing today. It can be a bit of a mysterious part of the process, especially for first-time authors, and he shares some incredible information about what kinds of edits you can do, how to work well with an editor, how to come to the process with a collaborative mindset. It's a really fantastic chat. Thank you to Liam for joining and sharing your wealth of expertise and experience. I hope you enjoy the chat. Hi Liam, thanks for joining me today.
Hey Jess, thanks so much for the invite. Definitely, happy to be here.
It's going to be cool today. We're going to be chatting about editing. You are an editor. And editing, everyone's favorite, and a very big part of the book publishing process, which some authors might not have much experience of.
Yeah, I'd say in my experience, absolutely. As an editor, I have been reached out to by a lot of indie authors and that sort of thing, and a lot of them really don't understand the process or have a very I don't want to say skewed or biased, but, very much down to that one podcast they listened to or, that one YouTube video they watched. And that's their whole idea of it. But there's so much to the process that really people don't see. So I've done a few talks where I like to demystify the process. So hopefully today I can help that for your listeners, help demystify the editing process a bit.
We will touch on that very soon, but I do want to ask you, just so listeners know who they're listening to, can you tell us about the experience you have in editing and the book publishing process generally, and what kind of work you do at the moment?
Quick first introduction. So my name is Liam Selby. You might find me as Liam OK Selby. It's my attempt at sounding cool with a bit of an author name. Got to go the fantasy route and have my two middle names featuring. But yeah, so I'd say I'm a writer first, and editor second. And I say that because I only found my way into this world because of my love for writing. I started writing back in high school, pulled out a piece of paper and a pen, and I just started trying to write my own stories. And then years later, I found the joys of editing, and that was where I got involved with the anthology publishing flash fiction. I helped out along the process, did a bit of copy editing. We'll talk a bit more about the different types of editing, I guess, in a bit. And through that, I just found a real joy and love for it. That was probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, I think. So I finished university and then decided to chase the dream at first of being an author and editor. So I went freelance. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing as a freelancer. Just knew how to edit. I did a couple of short courses and that sort of thing. Pretty much started with educational publishing. Working with a publisher in South Africa where I did a bit of proofreading for them on like school textbooks and that sort of thing. So I brought my science degree into it. And a little bit of expertise on that side. Ever since then, I've just been sort of working in the background while I was doing other jobs. But even those other jobs, I generally got picked up because of my writing capabilities and my editing capabilities, where like in the environmental industry, it's quite necessary with lots of reports and that sort of thing. And you'd be surprised how many consultants out there writing reports and they have data that doesn't match up, or they say two different things in two different parts of their report, or they've got a table with percentages that add up to 102% and that sort of thing. So I just sort of learned to bring an eagle eye to the process of editing and the nitty gritty. And then about 4 years ago, I went full-time freelance again, but this time pursuing my love for fiction, mostly science fiction and fantasy, because I love writing that, so it just makes it that much easier to edit. And then currently the sort of work that I do is I do work with some indie authors, providing them editing services, pretty much whatever they need. I'm try and help and provide it and put a little price tag on, because unfortunately nothing can be free in the world. And then, I work with New Dawn Publishing as well, as mainly copy editing, but I've also done a couple of structure edits for them. Their new book coming out very soon in May, called Deprivation, I worked on as a structure edit, so that was an awesome, being part of that process. And that's me.
Thanks for coming and sharing your experience. You mentioned Eagle Eye, and I think that's something I want to start on for especially fresh authors who've never handed anything they've written to someone else to edit. Getting a draft written is one whole big part of the process, and it becomes very emotional for most authors, especially first-time authors. How can authors approach the editing process with a healthy mindset in a way that isn't scared, isn't overwhelmed, and is prepared for what's going to be coming back to them when they start working with an editor?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I think you sort of hammered the nail on the head there, saying it's a very emotional process. Writing a book it becomes your baby, it becomes your life. You put a lot of yourself into it, and it absolutely can be daunting, terrifying, stressful, putting it in front of somebody else. And I think most people experience this already when there are writers, because we write things and we want people to read them. So generally your first step is you go to mum and dad, you go to your brothers and sisters, you go to your partner, you go to your friends, and whether they read or not, you're generally like, would you like to read my work? And then you're still sitting there like
sweating.
What if they hate it? What if they hate it? What if they tell me I'm a useless human being? And the thing is that never happens. And this, it's a very common thing, is it never happens, because they are your friends, they are your family, and they're usually going to be like, yeah, it's great,
we love it.
And you hear that tone and you're kind of like, did they really love it? Or, is it maybe just not their thing? So, it is a very daunting thing coming to, or, making that move to approach a professional to do it. So in terms of a mindset thing, is I normally like to advise people that come into it not with a sense of you are taking something to a professional who is better than you and is going to rip it apart or anything like that. Don't view it in that sense. Rather view it in the sense of you are hiring someone to collaborate with you on your work. Now that's got a two-pronged sort of thing to it, where on the one hand is don't come in and say, well, I'm the boss. If you say the scene sucks, well, I like it, I'm not going to listen to you. That's the one downfall of that sort of process, is that you got to be open-minded. When an editor, for example, says, hey, this scene is not quite working, I think you need to scrap it. If you really love that scene, that doesn't mean, okay, well, listen to them because they're the professional and they know what's better. I would say it's more coming with the mindset of, okay, there's clearly something that's not working in that scene. It's not hitting the right notes. It's not, conveying the right emotions that I'm wanting to get across. The editor is picking up on that and they're saying I should scrap it. I really want it in. So what can I do to bring about that effect that I was originally intending with that scene? And that's that sort of idea, or that's that mindset you've got to bring in, is that you are not having it pulled apart and told what to do on your story, but rather you're being given that external perspective on what's working, what's not working, what's hitting the right notes and what's not. View it as something collaborative. The editor is there to work with you, or at least I know myself, when I work as an editor, I'm there to work with you, not for you and not against you. And take that in mind as well. And learn from the process. I think that's the best mindset you can have, is try to put the emotions aside. Sometimes feedback's going to hurt, but put the emotion aside, and come in with that perspective of, I've got something to learn out of this, either to help me improve my current piece of work, or to help me improve my craft overall.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of coming with a collaborative approach, because like you say, there are some things you just can't see in your book when you have been looking at it for 15 rounds of edits on your own. And your mum is great, but she's not going to tell you what could make the story better. She
Yeah.
loves you and she wants you to know that what you've done is great. But an editor has experience every day, every week, every month of editing all kinds of stories. And they know without being too deep in the story, they can see what works and see what doesn't. And they can play that devil's advocate, which goes, could you make this better or should we just take it out?
Exactly.
I love that kind of external perspective that you guys bring. In terms of the kinds of edits that you can do, what are the sorts of edits that you offer and editors offer generally?
Cool. Well, the easiest way to break it down, and you'll hear this pretty much anywhere if you read up or listen up to anything on editing, is you've got your three sort of primary levels of editing. You've got your structure editing, your copy editing, and your proofreading. I'm going to try talk about it more from a traditional publishing sense, because you will see this in traditional publishing. But, for the indie authors out there, you absolutely need to try and achieve these three levels of editing as well. And that's where things can get difficult for indie authors, because, the more rounds of editing you do, the more expensive it can be. So you got to find where you can potentially cut corners, but also I'd say you generally need at least one round of each of these. So first is always going to be your structural editing. You might hear different names for it. There's structural editing, there's developmental editing, substantive editing is another one. Sometimes these mash up the different levels together as well, so it can get very complex. But at your basic level, your structural editing is essentially looking at the big picture elements. You as an author, when you sit down to do your revisions and you are looking at the story and you are trying to figure out, okay, well, what's not working in the scene, what's not working with this character, you're already doing your own level of structural editing. You are looking at the structure of the story, you're looking at the big picture elements that bring the story together. So that's typically your plot, your characters, I'd say those are probably your two biggest elements to look at in that, is your plot and your characters. And then the structure of your scenes as well, how your scenes flow into each other, how events come about, that sort of thing. So your editor is going to come in and do a structural edit, and that's typically where they are not looking whatsoever really at your words in the finer level of it, but rather at the those big picture elements. So they'll come in, they'll see, okay, well, their character arc is not quite working, or they fall a bit flat by the end of the story. They start off really strong but then seem to lose their sense of self. Those are the kinds of things that the editor's going to pick up on in the structure editing. This is I'd say the biggest play around of editing, because this is where you might be cutting chapters, cutting scenes, moving them around, shifting them around. And it's part of the process. Sometimes you can't see those structural elements yourself. You might even feel there's something wrong in the story. It's not quite hitting the way that I wanted to. What can I do to improve it? And that's where your editor is generally going to pick up on those things and tell you exactly where it's going wrong. One thing I like to do as an editor, I'm sure most new authors will have dabbled a little bit of research into structure of story, and then you get thrown all these things about the hero's journey and the 3-act structure, the 5-act structure,
this arc,
the 7-point structure, the Freytag's pyramid, and there's all
this
these
formula.
And I personally don't like to use those writing like I use them to help me sort of develop an idea for my story, but I don't use them while I'm writing my story because I like my structure to more naturally flow. But as an editor, I love using those sorts of structural frameworks to help assess where certain parts of the story might be lagging. You might find that between 60 and 80% of the story, 60 and 80% of your book in that section there is just boring. Things are not
Yep.
moving. You feel like you're waffling around and trying
You're
to
just
find
talking about the landscape
and
for 60 pages.
Yeah, and your characters are, doing all sorts of things to try and eventually get themselves to the point where they need to be for the climax of your story. And I like looking at those sorts of elements in terms of structure to find out, okay, what is going on in the section that is making it boring? Do we need a big explosion here to push them in a different direction?
Yep.
Do we need some
action?
Yeah, do we need some action?
Conflict?
Do we need a turn in the conflict? Do we need a betrayal? Do we need a character death? Something like that can really help you determine how to work on and fix that part of your story. So after you've done your structure edits, now it really changes like publisher to publisher, and absolutely will be very different for indie authors as well. Your structure editing, I'd say preferably you want to get at least a couple of rounds in, and that would be, you do your big revisions after the first round. You're going to need another round after that, typically, to make sure that your changes haven't gone and broken the story. And usually on my second run, I'm looking then a little bit finer detail of flow, of consistency, continuity errors. You might know those as plot holes.
Yes.
Anything like that might crop up because of revisions. Working with New Dawn, we typically do about 2 or 3 rounds of structure editing, depending on what the story needs.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, but as I say, it's that first one is the super uber, that's your 40-page report that,
Wow.
it's not generally going to be that big, but
it's
that's your big report that's detailed, that outlines everything. And then from there, it's sort of just, okay, you fixed up what needs to be fixed up. How do we refine those changes to make the story as strong as it can be? So then after all of that, then that's when it will move on to your copy editing. Some people might call it line editing. Some people separate the two. So I will give a brief explanation of both. So your line editing, I like to look at line editing as a separate entity, which will sit between structure editing and copy editing. And line editing is where if you feel you need a lot more work on the overall writing, that's where the editor can come in and go with that heavy red pen. And this is, I think, the part that people fear, because they think,
Get scared.
What if my writing sucks? And now the editor's
my teacher's coming in with a red pen and crossing it out.
Exactly. And now this is where you feel like you're under heavy scrutiny. But yeah, a good line edit is there to just really help with flow, and help with just overall writing. And I'd say it's, in my experience, I've more, with indie authors, I've more only offered line editing as a service when, if, let's say, English isn't their first language, if they struggle with aspects of writing and that sort of thing. That's where I say to them, I can come in with a bit more of an invasive approach. I'm still going to try and retain your sense of voice, your sense of style within the writing, but that's where I'm coming in with a bit more of a heavy-handed approach to fixing your sentence structure, fixing your flow, and making suggestions. I'm not typically going to rewrite the thing, but I'm going to make suggestions and say, I think this paragraph could be stronger if you bring in some more figurative language, bring in some more metaphor, bring in something like that. Or the section, you're doing an action scene and you're just using only metaphor, I think you're going to confuse your reader. Let's pare it back and make it a bit more, fast-paced, a bit more direct in the language. I'd say your next level is your copy editing. Usually I'd say forego the line editing and focus on your copy editing. This is where the editor's going to come in and really neaten up your writing. So this is looking at just punctuation, ensuring punctuation is correct. Ensuring there's no spelling errors, no awkward sentence structure. That's a big one, I'd say, for copy editing, where a lot of the changes I would make in copy editing are just the very small minutiae of, you've put a comma here where it's supposed to be a full stop. I'm going to change that. Other cases are, you've used a comma here, but you got 2 sort of independent clauses that are closely related. I would more suggest a semicolon or a n-m-, whichever style we're going with. And then, the other big part is style as well. So adhering to a style guide. Indie authors, don't really need to worry too much about it, but ask your editor about it, what style they edit to. If you want to go put in the extra bit of research, find out what sort of style guides are out there or what is most used for your local industry. So like in Australia, we have some style guides and style manuals that we follow. Yeah, and so a big one there will be style. So like in America, in US English or US publishing, like for parentheses or anything like that, you might use the M dash, which is a dash that's the length or the same length as the height of a capital M.
Yes.
And then your N dash is your the size of an N. So US English uses the M dash mostly, and UK, Australian, any sort of non-US English uses the N dash.
British colonized countries.
Yeah. As like personally, when I'm writing, I love the M dash. I think the M dash looks cleaner, no spaces on either side. It just feels better to me. But
Me too.
if I'm publishing in Australia, I'm going to adhere to Australian style. So that's a big part of copy editing there, is fixing up style. And then back to the awkward sentence structure, I'd say that's a big thing that I look out for there during the copy edits. It's just if I read a sentence and it trips me up, I think we get that a lot as readers, is sometimes you read a sentence, you're like, wait, what? And you have to read it again to get the flow of it. If I have to do that, if I feel I have to reread that sentence a couple of times to get the meaning, that means there's something awkward and wrong.
Yeah.
I won't even say wrong, as your structure might be correct in that sentence, like technically correct, but if it's tripping up the flow of your reader, then something needs to change to improve the flow.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things you'd look at a copy edit. Then you go into proofreading, and I'd say this is probably the level that has the biggest misconceptions in publishing, especially
I would definitely agree with that.
Upcoming authors and stuff. They think, oh well, I need a proofread. That's where someone's going to come in and pick up my typos and fix my sentences. What they're thinking of more is actually a copy edit.
Yes.
A proofread, and I've had this from authors saying, cool, I want you to do a proofread. Here's my raw manuscript in Word format, totally unformatted and things like that. That's where I stop them and say that's not a proofread. The word proof comes from, in publishing industries, you had your proof copy. So that was after all the typesetting had been done, after all the plates had been made. This is when publishing presses used actual metal plates and pressed the words into the page. You had your proof copy. So that was where like it's supposed to look like this. This is how it's going to look when we send it out into the world. However, we haven't thrown a cover on or anything like that, and we need somebody just to go through and make sure that there's no real issues that are going to pop up in the final copy. Nowadays we do that all in pretty much in Adobe, because typesetters will use let's say in Adobe InDesign is the industry standard. There are other software to use and that sort of thing. We can always touch on that later, but InDesign's a big one, and your output from that is PDF file, and that's how the internals of your book are going to look. And then that comes to me as the editor, and then I go through and I'm looking for typos, I'm looking for misplaced commas, that sort of thing, because you want to make sure those final errors that don't get picked up in the previous rounds, which is totally normal. Please, to new authors out there thinking, if you got a copy edit and there's a couple of mistakes still through there, do not think your editor is crap. It's just there's a lot to a book. There's a lot to see, and sometimes humans aren't perfect. I'd say a great editor will nail about 85 to 90% of the errors. A perfect editor, which probably doesn't exist, will hit about 95 to 100%. So proofreading will be picking up on those, but then a massive aspect of proofreading is looking at design as well. So they'll check that your page numbers are all correctly aligned and in the right place. They'll look for like extra spacing on the page somewhere, whether it's between paragraphs or even at the start of lines. I'd say that's a big one that sometimes copy editors and design or typesetters will miss, is a extra space at the start of your first sentence of a paragraph, which often you can't see because they're all indented, and sometimes it's such a small space you don't pick up on it. Proofreaders will be looking for things like that, alignment on the page, all those sorts of things. So those are your three stages, and as I say, that's you pretty much in traditional publishing, if you get a contract with a publisher, you will go through each of those stages at least once. As I say, typically maybe a couple of rounds of structural, usually one, maybe two copy editing, depending on your copy editor themselves. If you get one like me, I'm very thorough and very I put a lot more effort into that first single round and get as much of it as I can, and then if there's need for a second round, we'll do it. Otherwise, sort of move it along to proofreading, and proofreading can pick up on anything that was missed. But yeah, so typically you'll go through at least one round of each of those in traditional. And I'd say for indie authors, if you're looking to self-publish, try and get one of those done each as well. It can be a costly process, but at the very least have a structure editor to help you with the structural stuff. If you can afford to, get a copy editor to really neaten up and do the style and that sort of thing. And I'd say, if anything, learn to proofread yourself, and you can probably cut a cost there by doing your own proofreading. Or if you have a friend who loves reading and are big readers, ask them. I don't care. This is when you say to them, read the story. I think the story is great already. I don't need comments on the story itself. But if you don't mind going through this PDF, and if you spot any glaring things that if you were reading it in a print book, you would be like, what the hell? Why did the publishers let this through? If you know what I mean. If that's the sort of area you're going to pick up on. If you've got a friend who can pick up on those sorts of things, ask them to do a proofread for you. Because one, they get to read your book for free. You get to have a great time chatting about it. They get to be a part of the process of you publishing. But you've got that person who should hopefully have an eagle eye enough to pick up on that sort of thing.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for exploring each of those stages in such depth, because I think my next question is about, when do authors know they're ready to go to an editor? And I think you've kind of touched on that with the structural copy and proofreading phases. When will an author know, okay, I think I've done everything I can on this, and I think I'm ready to give it to an editor? What are some of the signs authors could look for in what they've written to know, yep, I'm ready to hand this over to, whether it's to do a structural copy or proofreading edit?
I think it's such a personal question, I'd say. It's really down to you as a person. You've got people out there who write millions of drafts, and then you've got people out there who write 2 drafts, and then they feel ready. So it's totally up to you. I think when your work is ready. When your work is ready, as well as if you are looking at it and saying, I don't know what else I can do with this. I think it's the best I can get it. That's usually a good sign that, okay, you're probably ready to move on. I would say, though, there's a massive caveat on that, where I think a lot of people do jump the gun a bit too soon, in the sense of they are not educated enough in writing or in their craft to know that they're not ready, if you know what I mean. And I see this quite often with indie authors that approach me, and it's one of the first questions I'll ask when we're setting up potential work is I'll say, how many drafts have you written? How much self-revision have you had? And have you had any other external feedback? And the red flags that to me say their work is not ready is, it's my first book I've ever written. It's the first draft I've written of that book. If it's the first book you've ever written, it's probably going to be bad. I'm sorry to say it.
I think everybody's first book is pretty terrible.
You should know that. It's a thing about being an author. Your first book is going to be that exploratory. I am learning my craft. I'm learning my voice. I'm learning my style. It's bad. Let me throw it away and then write something new. I won't say that's a total red flag, though, because you do have people out there who just happen to write a good story as their first story, or they've spent a lot of time on it. They might say, no, it's my first story, but I've been working on it for 10 years. This is my 17th draft. I've read multiple writing books. I have, gone to writing groups. I'd say writing groups as well is a big one. If somebody says to me, if I say, have you had external feedback? And as I said, that's one of the red flag questions. Have you had external feedback? Oh, well, yeah, my mum read it and she enjoyed it. Red flag, you've not had proper feedback on it. Potentially go look for that other sort of free feedback first before coming to an editor. I won't say no to the work. If you are saying, no, I will pay you right now to do my work. Oh, okay, cool. It's going to be a bigger edit for me. I'm probably going to really, as we said earlier, actually pull your work apart. And you might get crushed by that process, which I will feel terrible about. But if you're paying for it, you'll get it. But I normally like to caution those authors to say, do you think you are ready? I would say, if anything, like, your best thing is hone your craft, read books on writing, watch YouTube videos, Brandon Sanderson's YouTube videos, his class on writing sci-fi and fiction, sci-fi and fantasy.
And he's so funny and fun to learn from too.
And he's knowledgeable. Like, to me, he is not the best writer in the world. He is a very prolific writer. He is a very successful writer, but it's because of his understanding of the craft and his understanding of how stories work and how to tell a good story. So, watch his lectures, like those sorts of things. If you can tick just a couple of those boxes, and then writing groups as well. So I currently run a writing group with Peter Cowan Writer Centre. So they're based up here in Joondalup in Perth. And I'd say, even for my own writing process, it's been such a gratifying and great process to be with like-minded people writing similar stories, with different pockets of knowledge as well. I learn things from them all the time as people, bring up something. We'll bring up a topic and I'm sort of guiding the topic because I'm running the group, and then other people bring in some info that I'm like, oh, that's good, I'm going to write that down. Because there's so much to learn and there's so much writing advice out there. But you got to find that advice that works for you. And I think the best way of doing that is implementing it. And that's by working with people who can read your work, and, not charge you money for it, but read your work and give you some good, honest feedback from people who are either at the same level or a higher level than you in their writing craft. To me, it's, if you can tick those boxes, I would say you are absolutely ready to approach an editor. So just to recap those boxes, that is, you've had external feedback, it's not your first draft of your first ever novel, and you've done some good sort of self-education in writing, in your craft. If you can tick those three boxes, I'd say you're absolutely ready.
That's such good advice. There's so many great free opportunities out there to learn, for people to read what you've done. I think writers groups and just generally connecting with other authors that you trust, and being able to send things to each other and go, is this scene working? Is this scene not working? Does anybody have any tips on, battle scenes or whatever it is you're writing? I think connecting with other people. It's also really good from a psychological standpoint, because everybody's freaking out about their first book, their next draft, the scene they're writing. Everybody is. And it's great to meet people who have also written a really terrible first draft like you, and know that that's normal.
And can own it,
That's
I think
it.
owning it's a big part of it as well.
Exactly, and not feeling too impacted by, even professional authors write terrible first drafts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, for them, it's, throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And then going back. And I think what I've learned, I'm writing my first draft at the moment, and I've learned that the editing process is, for me, probably one of the most enjoyable parts, because it's long. And you have time. You have time to sit with it and go, is this working? And every draft you do, you read it back and you go, oh, that's getting better. It's getting better. Yeah. It's getting better every time you do it. And look, it might take you 10 years, but at the end of that 10 years, you'll have something that you've refined over and over and over. And so when you do hand it to an editor, it's just ready to go. They can pick it up, they can run with it, and you can start working on it collaboratively in that editing process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. And, just to touch on that again is, there are so many options of finding that feedback in that community. I think that's why you find, a lot of people who start off writing fan fiction end up doing pretty well as writers. And that's largely because of the platforms that were there for them to share their work. And I'm calling out like Wattpad for that. Where I knew writers who were fan fiction writers on Wattpad, and they honed their craft so much more quickly and effectively because they were putting their work out there. People were reading it and they were getting that on the fly sort of, feedback and that sort of thing. And their idea wasn't write it to become a business, to make money out of it and to put it out there. Rather, they're like, I really enjoyed this world and I wanted to write my own story within it, and I want to put it out there for people to read. And then finding, I think another side of it is finding not only what's not working and how to improve your craft by, making yourself better in the places that you're weak, but also learning what you're good at with writing.
Yes.
Everyone's got their own strengths within writing as well. So not only weaknesses, but strengths as well. Even in traditionally published, all the big authors that are out there now, we know, a certain author, you'll know what you like most about them, whether it's their voice, their sense of voice, or, do they craft characters really well, or are they so good at vividly describing something using all of your senses that it just immerses you into their story. So, it's a big thing is to find what you're good at within writing. And I think if you can't find a local writing group, if you can't find, that physical sort of aspect of feedback, if you're an anxious reclusive person and you don't like meeting up with random people at a coffee shop to go writing,
talking with strangers,
if you don't like that, there are other ways to do it as well. I think, I started off years ago. I joined an online platform or online writing group basically called Scribophile, and that was an awesome place for me to start, because first of all, the system was designed as, in order for you to put your work out to get feedback on it, you have to have karma points, and to get karma points, you have to review other people's work. And that's a great way of honing your own craft as well, is because you're reading other people's stories and you're trying to help them with their story, and then it helps you understand a bit more about what works and what doesn't work in stories, and then you can bring that back to your own work. And then, of course, once you do enough of that and you earn enough karma points, you put your own work out there, you put it on the chopping block, and then that's daunting as well. And it's total strangers on there; they're all usernames and stuff like that. But you put your work out there, and then it's just so gratifying to get some of that feedback from people. So there's so many ways out there, and I'd say don't limit yourself, and don't think, writing is such a solitary process, but don't think that you have to do it alone, and don't think that you have to, oh, well, I've written a first draft, I don't know what's wrong with it, let me send it to a professional. No, there are so many other routes to go without spending that money, straight up.
Yeah, and don't feel like you're in a rush too. I think sometimes when we're in a hurry, we feel like we've got to rush it through the process. Take your time. Take your time. That's such good advice. In terms of the practicalities of editing, if an author has decided to work with you in an editing process, whatever level of editing they've chosen, practically, what do they need to provide to you? And I'm thinking in terms of, obviously there's files, they have to deliver you a file to work with, but in terms of time as well, in the process, what's it like going back and forward doing edits? Like, how do you do it? Do you tend to do it one at a time, like one chapter at a time, or what's your general process? Do you meet up with them? Do you phone call, email? How do you usually do it?
I'd say, touching on those last points, absolutely, I like sort of the face-to-face contact as well. It doesn't have to actually be face-to-face at a coffee shop or anything like that, but just a Zoom meeting, Teams meeting or something like that. So I normally like to start the process with that, especially with a new author. If they've approached me as a freelancer, if they're an indie author, I almost always say, can we do a discovery call? I call it a discovery call, and that's for us to sit down and get to know each other, because editing, because it is such an emotional process as well, you got to you have to make sure that you gel well with the other person. So as an author, you got to find an editor that clicks with you. As an editor, I want to find the authors that click with me as well.
Yes.
It doesn't help working on somebody's work if you don't like the person, or if you don't communicate well with each other. I've had that before. I've had clients where I've taken them on and I thought it's all going to go great, and then it does go great, give the sort of feedback, but that after process just feels a bit like we can't work, I feel like it takes away from the collaboration aspect.
Yes.
Where then it becomes almost transactional, and they're treating it like, oh, I've paid you, so we do it my way. And it's like, we've got to sort of meet in the middle, because we are working on this together. Otherwise, why are you throwing your money at me just to say, well, I don't like your feedback and I'm going to park it away somewhere?
Yeah.
So that's a big part, is finding someone that you gel with. So if you're looking for an editor, research the editor. Like most of us are on Instagram or on social media. You can get to know us as a person. If you're a gamer who super loves crazy sci-fi games, and you've written a sci-fi novel because it's a nice nod to Warhammer 40k and you really enjoy that or something, find the editor who enjoys Warhammer 40k.
Yeah.
Odds are you're gonna find so much more out of that process, because you've got that shared commonality about the things that you like. So I'd say that's a big part of it. Of course, I'd say coming in with a good attitude is probably something you need to bring into the process. Don't come in with this transactional attitude. Don't come in with a negative attitude. Just bring a good positivity towards it to help that process along. And then, of course, on the, be ready with understanding what your story is actually about. It's one of the first questions I typically ask new clients is, tell me about your book. Tell me about your story. Tell me why I should want to read it. Because if you can't sell your book already at that stage, this probably goes back to our knowing if your work is ready for editing. If you can't define your story, I'm not saying give me an elevator pitch and give me that absolute refined pitch, but if you can't communicate your story well enough in like a short paragraph or two, that to me already says that you don't quite understand the essence of your own story. And how am I going to help refine that essence if you don't even know what it is? Know what your story is about and have a good idea of a summary of your story. When I say summary, please not like a 4-page, 4-page. Oh, well, this person goes here and then does.
Then
this
guy went over here, and then he got his sword out and he killed someone.
Yeah.
And
So that's why I say it's about the essence of your story.
What's it about without the actual microscopic events?
Yeah, well, it's about defining humanity through the lens of a cat. Like, oh my god, okay, no, I want to read that. Actually, I do want to read that now.
That sounds cool, actually.
I think I need to write that. No, it's probably been done 1,000 times, but yeah. So just understanding that essence of your story, and then knowing your word count. A big thing is word count, and being ready to give the editor the time they need. Editing is quite a lengthy process. I've been at when I'm at my peaks of editing, where I have a few clients on the go at a time, my time frames extend out. And that's just because, I'm juggling a few balls and I need to make sure that I can put the worthy amount of time into it. So don't come to an editor and say, well, I need it edited because I'm planning to publish it, in a month's time.
Yes.
That's not going to happen.
How far out would you want people coming to you from publication, say the publication date that they've set in their mind? Yeah. How far back would you want them coming to you?
If they're coming to me for like a structure edit, a year. I'd say minimum a year. That's the current publishing industry. When you sign on with a traditional publisher, from the date of signing your contract, it's normally about a year to a year and a half until you actually publish the book. So allow that same amount of time as an indie author, allow that same amount of time for your freelance editors if you're approaching them. And don't expect very tight turnarounds, because that first of all can push the editor away to say, nope, sorry, I'm not taking that on.
Can't fit it in.
On my plate. So be respectful of the editor's time, but also I think ensure that the editor's respectful of your time. If you ask for a time frame and they can't give you one, to me that's a bit of a red flag from an editor. If they can't say, well, look, my normal process is 4 to 5 weeks, that's what I'll do. I'll say 4 to 5 weeks for a structure edit of 100,000 to 150,000 word novel. If I am getting delayed for any reason, I will contact you. And I normally say that straight up, because that's saying this is my normal process, but life happens, so it might push it out, in which case I will communicate with you. If that's too long a time frame for you, find someone who can work on that time frame, but I
It
promise you,
happens.
you're probably not going to find someone with that, because that's
Yep.
you need the time. It's not just about the like hours spent actually reading the story and writing things up, but also like in structure editing, it's mulling. The amount of
Yeah.
times I read something in a story and I'm like, there's something wrong here, don't quite know what it is, I have to let it sit and mull in my mind, and you'll find me, you know, up at 2 o'clock in the morning, lying
The
in
idea
bed, staring
strikes.
at staring at the ceiling, and I'm like, what is wrong with it? Like, how do I
Why?
fix this? Where do I go with this? How do I help them get to that point?
Yep.
So it's quite a lengthy process. So yeah,
Mm.
be respectful at that time.
Mm.
And then another big one is if editors or publishers, if you're submitting to publishers, and I'll say this is a massive one, and I don't know how people still kind of get this wrong, is if they have given you submission guidelines or submission instructions like Times New Roman 12-point double spaced, you know, 1 centimeter margins, whatever it is they give you. Don't think, oh, well, you know, mine looks decent enough in Helvetica, so I'm gonna stick to that. Don't do that. Follow their instructions. And a big part of that is not because, well, you know, they just want to make their life easier by making sure it's already formatted and blah, blah. It can take me 2 minutes to format it myself to the formatting that I want.
Yeah.
What it says to me, though, if you are not following those instructions, is that you might be difficult to work with. Because you can't meet me just that halfway to say, okay, I will match your guidelines, I will hit your criteria.
Yeah.
That's what publishers look for. Publishers aren't doing it because they want all the stories to look the same or to make it easier,
No.
or so that they don't have to spend time formatting your story before they work on it or read it. They're doing that as that first check of, can you follow instruction? Because it can be very important to follow that instruction. If you
Yeah.
don't, that means you might be a difficult person to work with, in which case you might have people rejecting you or putting you down, or
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a bit of a negative point, that, but I think it's just such an important thing. If this is something that you really want, put in the time just to follow those instructions. Don't rush the
Yeah.
process. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say
And
those are the biggest ones. Yeah.
And like you say, you know, publishing is such a collaborative process. I think writers often feel like they're so isolated and so siloed. But
Yeah.
once you hand the book over and you start this editing process and the publishing process, generally moving on to production and typesetting and all of that, and then you're working with the marketing and sales teams. And for indie authors, that might be them. They might be the marketing and sales team, but you still have to have that, like you say, it's that energy of, I'm here to work collaboratively, and if you're difficult, a publisher will not work with you, because they need it to be that back and forward, everybody achieving the same goal of the story achieving XYZ. So it does have to be collaborative. And I think, yeah, meeting that criteria definitely shows that you've got the attention to detail that they need, and you've got the eyes for, I'm coming to this to work with you. This is not me coming in expecting you to bend over and
Yeah.
do what I say. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the whole biggest part of that. Is just show that you can work as part of the team.
Yeah.
And that also, that has the double-edged sword of being, don't go in thinking now you just have to be totally submissive and that you have no say in the process. If you get traditional, you absolutely have a say, and you need to speak up. But don't be obstinately difficult for the sake of it,
Yes.
or because you only wanted your way, sort of thing. You have
Yes.
to find that middle ground.
And if you are working with a publisher, you have to respect the connections that the publisher has. They have a whole sales team that are dedicated to retailers, and those relationships are really key for getting your book into the right hands. So, you know, you're coming to a publisher that has all the connections and has all the experience, and they know what will work in the market. So it is, if you are approaching publishers and you're trying to do that, trying to go down that road, it is important that you respect the experience and the kinds of things they need in a book.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that, you can, of course, self-publish and do it your way. But if you are attempting to approach publishers, be aware that they have their own house styles, they have their own teams and retailer relationships, and you're going to be benefiting from that if you can find a way to work closely with them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's such good feedback for, especially for indie authors, and also knowing that, like, this, it sounds a bit scary, but for first-time authors, you know, they don't know how your book will sell. So they're taking a little bit of a punt on your book as well. If you're a first-time author and you're lucky enough to get a deal, like they are kind of, they're throwing their resources behind you, and you want that relationship to be really fruitful and healthy.
Yeah.
In case there is a second book, a third book, you don't know. So
they're hedging their bets on you as well.
Absolutely.
It's the publishing industry is largely gambling. People buy your book off you because they feel that it will sell well. And they are taking a gamble. And if you hinder that process, there's a very good chance you're not going to be called back.
Yes,
you're not going to
unfortunately.
be asked for that next book. You're not going to be asked for that next series. If you can work with them and you can help them get those sales up, and help them essentially win that bet, then you're going to be their go-to. They're going to keep coming back to you and saying, it won't even matter how amazing the story is, but they will keep coming back to you saying, well, we know we can work with you, we know we can sell your book, and we know you're going to help with that process.
Yep, that's right. So how can you mentioned before finding an editor that kind of vibes with your vibe? You might have an initial discovery call with someone and go, oh, yep, this is the right person for me. They're into the genre of my story. What are the practical ways that authors, especially indie authors, can find editors out in the wild?
Ooh, tricky one. I wish I knew, because then that would mean I'd be putting myself in the right place to be found by those authors. No, so the big one is, there's tons of freelancers out there. There are so many of us out there, and it's quite I don't want to say competitive industry, because we're not really competing with each other, but there are a lot of editors, and there are so many ways you can go about finding an editor. One is social media. Nowadays, pretty much you can find anything on social media. So have a look out there for, editors who are, and this is probably where I'm failing as a freelancer in the social media sense, is that I don't post videos of, advice and things like that, that reach a bigger audience, but there are editors out there that do it. And I've found a lot of editors that way that I've learned from as well. So people putting out writing advice and that sort of thing, and often they will say there, and if you already there, that's I find beating that first point of discovery call, because you are getting a little bit of a personal shot into who they are, how they talk, what they talk about, and what sort of books they might work on, and that can give you a sense of, this might be the right editor for me. I've had a couple of people approach me because they've seen, I think probably because they've seen some of the things that I've been working on. They've seen me on social media and they said, this seems like the kind of person, which I find amazing, because I don't put a lot of videos and stuff out there. So, it's not like, it's not like they've heard me say like, oh, okay, this guy is clued up. Like, rather, I think they could just see a bit of my personality that, okay, this might be the right person. Other ones is networking with other editors. A big boost to my career was joining the Institute of Professional Editors, and there are ways out there, there's these groupings of editors that you can find out there, and then find your right editor through that. So like IPED, so the Institute of Professional Editors, on their website they've got a editors directory, where a lot of sort of professional, and these are vetted professionals in editing, are on there offering their services, usually links to their website or anything like that, and you can contact them that way. There's other sort of communities and groupings. Another one that I'm sort of a part of is the Freelance Editors Network. So if you go to Freelance Editors Network, chuck that in Google, I think it takes you to like fen.org or something like that. And on there is just a list of various editors that are freelancers across Australia, and they put in a bit of a bio, the sort of things they like working on, the sort of types of edits they do, because you've got some editors who will only really want to do structure editing. You've got other editors who only really want to do copy editing. So you can find the right editors for yourself there. So that's a big way. Then there are obviously other platforms out there. I'd say if you're looking for the cheaper approaches but slightly less personal approaches, then you can look at platforms that are out there like freelancer.com.
It's like Reedsy as well.
Reedsy. I'd say
does
Reedsy's
some
probably good. I've tried to get onto Reedsy, and they're very difficult to get onto because they sort of really, really want the cream of the crop. So that's probably a good way to go. But just know that out of that is often you will get a more impersonal service out of it, where to them you are just another number. And you really have to work to their schedules, or otherwise goodbye. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for an editor like me who's pretty much going to shout your praises and answer your emails at 12 o'clock at night when you're freaking out about something, and I'll be like, calm down, it's
having a panic attack.
I'd say the editors like myself you can more find out there in the world. A lot of us are reclusive and quiet, and you might not find a lot of us, but there are some good people out on Instagram and that sort of thing that you can find.
Yeah. Speaking of your work, I read this book that I'm holding in my hands, Awoken Forest.
Yeah, Awoken Forest.
By Wesley Croft.
Lovely book.
Shout out to Wesley.
Yeah, shout out to Wesley. You had him on the podcast before as well.
I did. And I loved that book, and I love the way you did it. And I could see that the genre, which for those who are unfamiliar with the story, it's a fantasy sci-fi kind of crossover. And I could see that you understood the way you edited it. I could see that you understood those genres and the way those genres should work and how they can weave in and out of each other. So kudos to you for a fantastic edit, and everybody should go read it.
It was all on the author. It was minimal effort on my part, honestly.
Wesley did a wonderful job. He's a great guy. But he also commented on...
with as well, so,
he commented that he loved working with you because he loved the support and the encouragement you offered him. And I know that for many authors, that's such an encouragement after such a huge process to have an editor say, hey, you can do this. We can get there. Let's just work together and we'll find a way to achieve what you want to achieve. I know that for any author, that's a very big thing. So shout out to you and Wesley for your collaboration on such a fantastic book.
Yeah, go read the book. It's great.
Yeah. Now,
absolutely zero editor bias there as well. Yeah.
Now, just in finishing up, how can people reach out to you and potentially have a discovery chat with you about something they're writing?
Yeah, sure. I'd say, unfortunately, my website's down. Like my main way is through my website, which is currently down at the moment.
Oh, sad.
It's undergoing a bit of maintenance and a revamp. I've needed to figure it all out and sort of change it up. So I'm going to approach it in a new way. Largely to also bring in a lot more of my own writing side to it rather than just editing, as I'm shifting my priorities a little bit to get my own writing done in the next year. But yeah, otherwise on Instagram, what's my handle again? I had this prepared in my mind and then now I've gone and spaced on it. I can't remember if there's my business name is Lux Editing, so that's LOKS. And then you can find me on Instagram, which is Lux Editing with an underscore between Lux and editing.
I'll put a link in the description as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd say Instagram at the moment is probably the main place. Send me a DM on Instagram, and I can, get in contact with you from there. For all those wondering why it's Lux Editing and Lux Selby and that sort of thing, it's just my initials. I was very lucky to end up with a bit of an acronym already built into my names. So yeah,
maximizing it.
Yeah, so that's Liam OK Selby, so Lux Selby. I'd say that pretty much those are the main places. Hopefully the website will be up soon.
Cool.
You can find me there.
Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your wonderful expertise. I'm sure a lot of people have taken a lot away from this chat today, so thank you.
I hope so, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for the invite. It's always great talking craft and talking editing as well. I think, I can talk writing for days, then get me onto editing and I can talk editing for weeks. So I think that's sort of the process as well. You write your book for days, but then you edit it for weeks. So
that's it. That's it.
Thanks so much for bringing me on board.
No worries. Well, thanks to everyone for listening. I hope you're having a good week and good luck with all those drafts out there and all the authors who are about to jump on the editing process. Give Liam a call, have a chat with him, see if you guys can vibe together. And if not, keep looking further. Take all the tips that Liam has shared today and put them into action. Thanks, everyone. Bye.